There we go. All right. It says we're going live, and it says we're live. I'm going to believe that that's true. Well, hello, everyone. I am Kat Udero, psychic empath and psychic wrangler. And before we see who I've wrangled into today's show, I want to welcome you to Third Eye Salon, where in each and every show, we take a deep and fresh look between the veils of reality. And today we're looking between the veils of Christopher Hancock's Kundalini awakening and his awakening as a psychic, an empath, and a healer. So before we say hello to Mr. Christopher, let's say hello to Linda Coulter-Burge, psychic and conscious business coach, and the co-hostess with the mostest. I love you, Linda. How are you?
I'm fabulous and excited as always. I just feel the huge heart in Christopher, and I'm excited for you guys to get to know him better. As always, I am your live stream host. So that means you play nice or I kick your butt out of here, because that's the way I roll, man. So play nice or get out, but have great discussions. So it's okay to question stuff. Always just do it with respect, okay? And as you watch this, hit like, share, and subscribe so that you get notified of our shows, and give it to your friends as a wonderful gift so that they can also expand and love and feel like they're part of something bigger when maybe they feel a little isolated right now. So do that. And if you can't get to us on YouTube, then you can also listen to us on Apple and Spotify. And in fact, even if you watch us on YouTube, if you go to those links and you watch us for a little bit and you give us thumbs up there, it really helps. So we appreciate it when you do that. Something else we appreciate is that you're buying us coffee. We love our coffee. We love this kind of coffee. We love the other kind of coffee. And the link is below in our YouTube page. And also join our Facebook group, because the conversations continue there. So go to Third Eye Salon on Facebook. With that, hello, Christopher. Again, I'm so excited to have you introduced to our lovely group that we have here and learn so much more about you.
Well, thank you both for having me on here. I'm really honored, and I love to be able to share what I do and my story with people. And my main goal definitely is to help others right now go through the major shifts that are happening on the planet. I feel like I have gone through several things a step ahead of larger masses in certain ways. I feel it's to help them get out ahead of it and master it.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, Christopher. And at this juncture, I would normally be saying hello to Jason, but I don't know where he's at right now. So if you were all sending him psychic pings, hopefully he's okay, and hopefully there's not an issue that has delayed him. I know last time we had tried to have Christopher on, his cat had to go to the emergency room that morning.
Yes.
How is your kitty cat?
She is great. She is relaxing right over there somewhere, alive and well.
Alive and well. Good, good, good.
Yes.
Families first. Even our fur families come first.
Exactly. I appreciate that.
Of course. All right. I'm going to read Mr. Christopher's bio. It's oh so brief and succinct. And then we're going to get into it. So Christopher is a Chironic healer, plant medicine facilitator, psychic medium, and intuitive astrologer who works closely with lightworkers, empaths, and starseeds to help them navigate their ascension and awakening process. As a living embodiment of Chiron, the wounded healer, Christopher is passionate about assisting clients in activating their highest potential and reconnecting them back to their nature and purpose. So give us a thumbs up if you're excited to meet Christopher, and also if you're excited to learn more about how mediumship and astrology tie into the ascension process, because that is a new one on me. So I'm excited to hear that unfoldment. And I kind of want you to crack it open a little bit. For people who don't know who Chiron is and what a Chironic healer is, would you kind of break that down for us so we can be on the same page as you?
Absolutely. So even beyond astrology, Chiron is a mythological archetype. And archetypes are stock characters, types of energy fields, energy signatures that are embedded into our collective consciousness. And Chiron represents the part of our consciousness and our human evolution that is about transmutation and transmuting. So alchemy, you can look at Chiron as an alchemizing force as well. Chiron in astrology represents your wound. It represents what you've come in on a soul level to choose to experience, you could say, pain through, but it is a weakened point from your consciousness perspective. It's a vulnerable point. It's where trauma lives. It's where triggers live. This is your primal wound that you come in with that gets activated within the first couple years of physical life. And from then it begins to attract unto itself. And it is our job, if you will, as light workers, starseeds, anyone who is on a conscious healing path, to work with that energy and understand that you chose that weakened point, whether it was mythological, astrological, however this is living through you, you chose that point as a point of power, because any place that is less than or weakened or vulnerable, you pay more attention to, and there's more care that goes into that. And that causes a transmutation. And for the soul, if there's not something to pull it back into lower frequencies, if you will, the tension wouldn't be there for when you let go and it flies into the light, if you will. So Chiron can also act as a tension point in your life when you go through certain Chiron transits. And Chiron also represents gifts that you have, innate spiritual gifts that are not just given to you by source or some deeming God when you have healed yourself in some way. It's already there. It's part of the program. It's part of the key. So the glyph for Chiron is a key. Chiron at this time truly is the key to our spiritual evolution and ascension process.
Wow. That's just, again, it just pulls me back down to my heart. And so I think that also Chiron was the centaur. And so the whole tension of pulling the string.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, like that tension is like,
exactly.
And, one of the things that you said that, caught in your other interviews was you turned your plight into flight. And again, it makes me think of that. And so Chiron the centaur was part of mythology, which I don't think our mythology is really mythology. I think it's memory kind of covered up as mythology.
You're exactly right. In mythology, we shouldn't even associate something being unreal with the word myth or mythology. It is a way of representing a type of an energy signature in an embodied way that we would understand more easily. And Chiron is Sagittarius. Sagittarius, the sign, is not related to Chiron very much. Virgo is. Chiron rules Virgo, the healer.
That's what Linda is. Sorry, I was like, I'm a Sag, and Linda's a Virgo.
Well, look at that.
Linda's a double Virgo.
So Chiron's energy lives very strongly in her naturally. And just like if I have Cancer rising, the moon's energy lives in me very strongly. So as well as Chiron due to certain placements. But your Chiron energy is, you have to take it away from the Sagittarius energy, because Sagittarius is about growth, expansion. We love that. But Chiron sits somewhere earlier than that. When you reach, even when you look at Virgo, Virgo's the sixth sign of the zodiac, and it represents the gateway between the self and the other, because Libra, which comes after Virgo, represents the other. We are relationships. So Chiron actually sits between Saturn and Uranus in its orbit in our physical solar system. So Chiron also is called the Rainbow Bridge, because Chiron is the gatekeeper between the physical world, Saturn being the last of the physical 3D planets, and Uranus being the beginning of the transdimensional or upper dimensional planetary forces. Chiron acts as a gatekeeper there, just as Virgo does, because Chiron in mythology was a teacher, astrologer, a healer, and a medium.
Oh.
So if you embody the Chiron archetype, or you are very strong in that Chiron energy, being a teacher, a healer, a medium is going to show up.
A ring a ding ding, Linda. I didn't know you were a double Virgo. That's a lot. I mean, yeah, that's a whole other conversation. That'll be a side conversation for another time because there's so much to share about Linda's journey. So I want to talk about a lot of things. A lot of times I like to go into the childhood of our guests, if possible, so we can kind of see, you know, that transition of coming into finding yourself. And I know that as a kid, you were trying to embrace what we call the toxic male, which is like the unfeeling male, the male who's an alpha, who doesn't care about people's, you know, what they want. It's me, me, me. And that's what we mean by toxic male. But that's, you know, there's also toxic females. I mean, whatever, it's not a judgment, right? It's just like an understanding of a mindset and an emotional damaging. And so, you know, contrast that I want to be a toxic male versus that 11-year-old who was like, I think I'm making all of this up in my mind. I think I am God, and I'm just creating this all in my mind and all in my experience, which, you know, we all are doing that on a level. So I'm wondering if you can kind of like compare, contrast, and unravel that for us.
Sure. My mother has 4 children. I'm the third one. All of us are boys, and well, kind of. Most of them are boys. Some of us are a little non-binary and mixed around in there. So, but me, I'm all over the place. I was the only child my mother had to buy books for to help me, or to help her know how to raise me, because of how intense it was. And so something was different from the very beginning. But it was very loud, and it was very demanding, and it was the highly sensitive part of me didn't really get to come out, or didn't get looked at that way for many years of my life, because of how quote unquote bossy or demanding,
Diva,
you can definitely say all of that. I have a stellium in Leo in the first house, and that came on very strong, and it still does. And so that energy was channeled into the only way my parents knew how to channel that energy. Besides physical abuse and certain things that happened at home, which we'll save that for later, but it definitely happened. Theater and acting and music, those were the big things. The only thing that made me be quiet as a child was Disney sing-alongs and Barney and things like that. I had to sing. My mother said the first time I quit crying was when I learned how to sing a song. And so something about frequency and music is always there, and it shows up in my astrological chart very strongly as well. But once that took hold, I had a place to channel a lot of that energy. I was the kid who had a camera and was having all the kids in the neighborhood play in my movies, and I was the director, the master of ceremonies, my dad would call me. So I being an actor, a director, the face of a company, a corporate CEO, that was definitely where it was headed and where it went, and what it seemed to, where it would have wanted to go without redirection if 11 years old had not happened. And there were many things that led up to that, and there were things that I experienced. Of course, like any psychic medium, I was in bed at night wondering what was watching me on the other side of my blanket that I couldn't let down, because I was so terrified. Something was watching me. Yes, I saw horror movies, but also my brothers didn't have the same issues I was having with like feeling things and feeling like I was being watched and seeing people walk around corners. All that stuff happened. Yes, it did. But at 11, I had experienced a death in my family, and just seeing her in that coffin completely rocked my world, if you will. And I'd never experienced that type of sadness, emptiness, and it just sent me into a kind of spiral, if you will. But from that point forward, I believed that I was God, and that all of this was made up, and everything here was a hologram. But I didn't use that word then. It was an illusion, or it was a movie that was playing out. And when I died, I would wake up as God and know how to do it right, because at that point there was a right and a wrong way to do things. But I didn't, until I was 15 or 16 years old, I really believed that. I really felt that in my body in a really detached, not good feeling way. It did not feel good to me at the time. It felt just almost like, why do I have to keep doing this? why do I have to keep watching that? Why can't we just skip to the part where I'm God and I can just make this go away or make that happen better for them, whatever the case may be. But I reached a point at 16, 17 years old where I became atheist, because that was the next logical step for me. And that really didn't sit well in my system and gave me a lot of anxiety for several years. And around 18 is when lights started to go out, because I don't know if you've heard of the term slider, but it stands for street light interference. And it's people who can make street lights go out. And I didn't know that was a thing. For 10 years, I experienced this every single day, making street lights go out, lights in my home. And this was beyond the zapping of light bulbs and the combustive electrical things that were happening during my Kundalini awakening. This was just, I'm driving in my car, I look up at a light and it goes out. I used to think there were radars in the light bulbs hanging over the streets to let cops know who was speeding or not, because I used to be a speed demon, baby. And I just knew that was how they were going to get me, because it was happening so much. My brain will go to radars and cops coming to get me over spirit any day. Okay, especially back then, because that was going to be, it was always in the back of my mind though. Is this my Aunt Tina? Is this Crystal? Is it someone who has passed away? Am I being communicated with? But on the surface, it had to be something else. And I always wanted to start with that. But those are the things that, of course, I'm here today doing this when I look back at things like that. Little things that at the time didn't seem really big. But during all of that, there was this pull towards going to school for acting, working on a music album. And I've done this for years, acting, singing, dancing. I went to a performing arts high school. But I feel all of that was preparing me for something bigger, because although I totally love to put on a show, I have reached a point where the impact I'm wanting to have on the audience is not pretend anymore.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious, like, so what was the transition point from that to, because I feel like there was a bit where you did the atheism. I guess there's a point where you did try on atheism.
Yes.
To
that quickly went away.
Okay.
After a couple years, I didn't have a choice but to. When I was 18 years old, one of my very best friends passed away, and I couldn't sleep for months. I had to have my bed pushed up against a wall so I could lay against the wall and face the rest of the room, so that at any time I could open my eyes and see her and tell her to go away. And it was so strong that all the lights were on. This went on for a couple of years. I used to be deathly afraid of seeing spirits and ghosts and all that stuff. Those types of movies really bothered me. Not the Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger and Chucky. Loved all of that. Didn't bother me at all. Murder. Oh yeah, I have Pluto and Scorpio, baby. None of that bothered me at all. I'm made for that. This generation's made for that. I was not designed to think that what's lurking behind those corners is bad or scary. And that's what those movies taught me. They didn't teach me that it wasn't real or any. They taught me that what was lurking around the corner or what was in the room with me that I couldn't see should be feared. That's what it taught me. So there was a lot of trauma unwinding I had to do just around being a psychic medium. But around 18, 19 years old, when I really had to say to myself, there is something, you're experiencing things. Maybe it isn't the Christian way that you thought it was. Maybe that doesn't work, but that doesn't mean none of this is real either. And that was at the time where I didn't believe in chakras. I had to have my own experience with these things. Like, you can feel them. I can feel them. I never had sensations like that I could remember when I was young and as a teenager. Most of what has happened up to this point has happened after I decided. One day, I'll just use this as an example. One night I was driving home and one of the lights went out. And usually when it would go out, At this point, I'm 19, 20 years old. So I put on my seatbelt because I thought it was spirit telling me to put my seatbelt on or something. I used to tell him, if you're doing that, there should be some reason. So let me put my seatbelt on, or let me, like, maybe you're trying to warn me about something. And then I just said out loud, if it happens again, or if this is real and it's not just a coincidence that keeps happening every single day for 2 years, I'll believe it's a coincidence for 10 years. And if this is not a coincidence, make it happen again. And as soon as I said that, one of the lights went out. Of course, I was like, whoa. And I'm driving, and this is really insane to me. And I said, if this is real, I promise if you do it one more time, I'll believe and I won't be atheist. We'll just be done with this whole thing. And the third one went out as soon as I said that. From that point forward, that was it. And there were other things that really solidified my belief, but that was the moment where I said, I don't have a choice. Something's talking to me or communicating with me. And so we're going to let that happen because that feels better to me. This feels more right. I can now go to sleep at night because I'm not obsessing about turning to dirt and being nothing at some point. Because that used to really bother me.
Yeah.
My ego really didn't like that.
It's you can't because you can't imagine not existing. You can't.
And I tried to every night for 2 years, and I was stressed about it.
Nancy Legit, one of our members and on the live chat with us, she's asking, I just saw I have Chiron as an asteroid. I have no idea what that means. Do asteroids impact us in terms? We have what is? Yeah, you speak. That's new to me.
Yeah, so Chiron is an asteroid, like many of the other asteroids that show up in your chart. Asteroids do matter. They may not be the original planetary energies that were here from the beginning, but when was the beginning and what was the beginning? If you look at this as, like, for instance, Pluto, it is said that Pluto's always been there, but we were not able to see it at one point because it didn't vibrate in our frequency range. And now, based on our evolution, we're able to sense and work with this energy. So asteroids are wanderers. Centaurs are wanderers. They wander and they're nomadic, like Sagittarius. And so, although some of these are a result of an impact with another planet, and so you're seeing byproducts of that and filaments of that, others of these asteroids, like Chiron, came from another star system and came from another place and got locked into our solar system. So the minute it becomes locked into the solar system, it then becomes a part of the mechanism. It then becomes an influence. And then when we name the planetary energy, that name, it then activates it within our collective consciousness. So all of the asteroids have an effect on you. Some of it so minuscule or so minute you wouldn't even be able to tell. Some of it so fine and nuanced that you would need to raise your frequency or lighten up a little bit to activate or work within those frequency ranges, because many of the people that we experience today and are alive today still exist really strongly in their sun and their moon and their Venus and their Mars. They're very animalistic, primal. I want this, I want that, I want to eat that, I want to touch that. They're very physically focused. I am this, I feel that. When you reach into these higher planetary energies, Juno, Vesta, Pallas, Ceres, Chiron, Hygeia, there's many different ones. They're showing you more refined parts of your consciousness that for some people may not be activated. And that doesn't mean they're less than. That could be a personality thing. So, and it doesn't mean that you're better, like if you're activated in these energies. Everyone is. But when you look at the asteroids, some of those asteroids are bigger than like Ceres is larger in mass than Pluto. So, and she's closer to the sun than Pluto, which tends, the further out, the stronger the magnetic pull, the greater the force. But she's larger in mass. So based on many calculations, some of the asteroids should be having just as large of an effect, if not equal of an effect. So yes, Chiron is an asteroid, but I call it a planet. It's there.
God, you're just a warehouse of information. Miss Linda, do you want to pop in before I move forward?
Well, we just have a question in here because we were talking on the side about horror movies. And Lulu
Yeah,
asked,
let's go there.
can I still have or still be high vibe and like horror movies?
Yes, yes, yes,
That's what I was
yes,
gonna
yes,
say.
yes.
Absolutely.
I have to, and I'm going to be very honest here, because let's go there, because there are many different types of horror movies. There's Nightmare on Elm Street. It's very cerebral, very psychological. There's Saw, which is very also cerebral and psychological. There's many of them that are very gory, very graphic, very dark. There are parts of your consciousness that wants to explore that in a safe way. And there's also a part of your consciousness that really enjoys a lot of that. Okay. So it doesn't mean you're evil. Okay. There are millions of ladies right now reading a crime novel about somebody being murdered or someone being taken into a sex chamber and being whipped, and they're loving it. Okay. And that's okay. All of that's okay. It's activating some primal parts of your human nature, and that's fine. Just like if you have a cat, you kind of have to give them certain toys and certain things to keep them stimulated and certain parts of their feline nature activated. This is doing that for you without you actually having to go out there and hunt and forage for berries and kill things. It's okay. It doesn't have to be as dark as we make it out to be either. I'd actually rather watch some of these horror movies than to watch some of these people screaming at each other on TV. And it's about what feelings it's invoking for you. If you sit down to watch a horror movie with your partner and you two are cuddled up and it's a bonding experience and you don't really go too deep and it doesn't affect you don't feel depressed or anxious after. There are certain movies that if I was to watch, it would take me into a dark feeling place. The Notebook can take me into a dark feeling place. Okay. So let's be very clear. Be mindful of how you feel after, not about what someone else has deemed dark or violent media. But generally speaking, horror movies are not going to raise your vibration. They create fear. But also, if it's fun and you're having fun, it's about doing what's right for you in that moment, number one.
I also think they can be very empowering depending on the actual movie. Or, you know, for me, if I want to de-stress, I watch The Walking Dead, you know.
Which is a really good show, and it's well done. Right? None of that you're watching is real. It's not real blood. It's all mimicking something. So there's actually something. That's what theater and all that entertainment is about. Can it be overdone? Yes. Can it lower your vibration? Absolutely. But so can certain, like there have been times where I've listened to Abraham Hicks videos and they've lowered my vibration because of how pissed I was that I wasn't where they were wanting me to be, and nor were they asking me to be there. But don't you see, I was like, I don't feel good. Let me listen to this video, which made it worse.
Right. Yeah, it feels like you're being shamed for not achieving that level.
Yeah.
That level. And that's a big thing. And as Chiron, if you will, I experience a lot of the other side of it, the feeling of the insecurities and I don't always stay positive affirmations all the time. There's a lot of power and backing up into those insecurities and sitting in it and really discovering it. That's where the healing happens. So if you have a strong Chiron in your chart, like I do, Chiron conjunct the ascendant, then there will be times where that pain is necessary for some type of really powerful thing to happen. And it can be used that way as well, rather than just, let's just see what happens. Knowing that you can go in saying, I'm going to start untying things and unwinding things myself, rather than just sitting in here waiting for someone to shine a light on it. I'm going to go ahead and do the work myself, because I know that this energy has been set up that way for me to master a part of myself rather than get defeated or fail at something. There was definitely nothing in astrology or nothing in this universe that was designed for failure. Even deconstruction is not failure. So there's many concepts that we have to move beyond before we can really embody some of this information.
Yeah, I think that whole thing of everything is seeking to bring you forward, even if it has to take you down first. You know, like taking you down might be the key thing in order for you to move forward so you can get past yourself or heal something or whatever. And just on a personal note, I freaking hate horror movies, and I hate zombies most of all. Just want to say that and put that out there. I'm so sensitive that when I see that stuff, like I have like memories from childhood seeing things accidentally, being like, and it's still with me. So it's like I hate that stuff. I'm such a sensitive little.
Yes, I can be very sensitive to that.
Oh, go ahead, Christopher.
Oh no, you go ahead. I was just commenting.
I was just going to say, I think part of it is my memories from past lives where I was more in the military warrior.
Absolutely.
It brings that out of like this visceral memory.
It's interesting you would bring that up because there's many things that I can't watch now as an adult that I would have been able to watch as a kid before those memories or things came up during my awakening. I have memories of being in insane asylums. I've also had this strange fear of being insane since I was a kid. So there are things that make sense. I have a lot of witch wounds. So there'll be times where there's certain things I just can't watch because I've really been in those places before. And these dungeons and these dark places and these sets, it no longer feels imaginary. There's something recalling about it.
Wow.
We have a couple of questions too.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't
go
want to.
Ahead, Kat.
I just don't want to get in the thing where we're like breaking down what is astrology and how does astrology work. So I don't want to do that one. But if Christopher maybe wants to get into that in our group chat, that would be fine.
Yes.
And I can also keep things succinct.
Well, I've got so much I want to talk to you about. I just don't want it to become like, because you are this warehouse of information. So I'm going to ask you right now if you'll come back on for a second show in the future, because I feel like we've just cracked open the book. I'm like page. So was there another question outside of that, Linda?
I'll do the other one on the side. It was about the what'd you call it? Sliders?
Oh, sliders with the light.
With the lights.
Yes.
Because the cause of that, and I call it flares that I used to have, where I will shut down equipment and things like that. And
now many light workers, starseeds, empaths, and I love those labels. Some people don't like these labels. I'm just claiming it now. It just helps us to kind of understand, like, everyone's a light worker. I get it. But for those of you who know you're a light worker and you're empathic, and especially if you're a starseed, because this is a real thing, your energy field's quite different. And this goes for the highly sensitive empaths as well, that may not have this like otherworldly connotation, starseed, light worker, I'm here to do some type of work. Some people are just sensitive and they're like, shit, I'm just trying to go to work. And I can't even get to work. Everything's too loud. Everything's too bright. So they will experience a lot of times draining their watch or their phone battery going dead. This happens for a lot of people, especially during their spiritual awakening. However, sliders a little bit different, because these people, how I came to know this information was before I moved to Atlanta. So about 2 or 3 months after my Kundalini awakening, I should say it was still during, but after it calmed down a little bit and I just kind of came back to a set point, I decided to move to Atlanta. And right before I got my U-Haul, I locked my keys in my car and had to get an Uber to someone's house and all this stuff. And on the way in the Uber, I said to the driver, because she was listening and giving me a lot of feedback about stuff, because I was very stressed, and I guess I was just letting her have it, which is unlike me to unload on someone. And I said to her before I got out of the car, I said, I think you're an empath, is what I said to her. And she turned around and looked at me and said, did you know that you're a slider? And I was like, what's a slider? She said, it's somebody who can make street lights go out. I was just, and then she turned back around again, like a movie, like turned around, do you know you're a slider? And then turned back around again.
Right?
I was just like, how do you know about that? And she was just like, you should research more about it. And I was like, I'm going to get out of the car now, because I went through Kundalini awakening a few months ago, and I still don't know for sure if that's what that was, but you know, I've been on WebMD, and I've also been on KundaliniFacts.com, and I don't know which one to go with yet. And now you're here telling me this information. I was like, what's going to happen next? That was when it really started to amp up. Everything started to amp up then, right as I moved to Atlanta. That's when everything began. So it makes sense. But the slider phenomenon, when I looked it up after that, it really seemed like there wasn't a lot of correlation between the people. It wasn't like everyone who's saying that they're a slider also has experienced abduction or have dreams about that or have little implants in their body like I do, and that they don't seem to have that same story, all of them, but they all seem to say that it's when they look at the light or when they're about to drive next to it or when they're walking under it. I've had them go out when I've snapped my fingers, or when I've been I was standing under a street light one time after we left a bar. This was 8 years ago, telling my friend that lights go out around me. And when I told her, they'll go out like that, it went out right above us. And it was just, and that's not unusual. When I just looked at her and was like, I'm not mesmerized by this at all. She was completely shaken by that and the whole concept. But the slider phenomenon, what I have intuited after all this time, and I've done research, but really what I'm feeling is that especially some of the street lights are on a grid or on some type of connective where if one goes out, the other ones do not. And some of them are agitated or are sensitive to electromagnetic fields, as with any electricity. But these more so based on when they're supposed to come on a timer and things like that. So I think that's why street lights usually are the ones that get the most attention. And that's what I have noticed. But it's also happened in my home. It's happened on little posts on the outside of people's houses. So it's not just the same thing every time. But I do believe, and what we've all noticed is that whenever it happens, we're either feeling really jazzed up about something or really in our head or really like upset about something. One of the two. Now, they'll go out when I'm not flustered about it for years, but it'll usually also be when I'm not paying attention or when I'm really deep in thought about something and not present. But there's something about the amped up energy. It usually really happens when I'm excited about something or upset about something that just happened or really in my feelings about something. So it's something to do with our energy field. I just don't have the full scientific data yet.
I used to have that in my 20s where I'd go for walks and lights. It wasn't every light, but it'd be like a light there and a light over there. As I walked under it, would go out. And then I did it once where I was like that one and it went out like that. And that was like 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
Even though it's not happening repetitively and constantly, we could say that you're definitely a slider and you've experienced that phenomenon.
I have a slider badge. And right next to my Boy Scout badge. But I want to talk to you about Kundalini. That was like my next topic. So you kind of opened that door already. I think, again, there's no one size fits all in terms of how it happens. Some people experience Kundalini awakenings during sex, during love, where they feel intense love. Other people not feeling that at all, and it happens. And I'm wondering if it can anger, is it just extreme emotions that activated, or what's your experience, and then what's your understanding?
My understanding is that if your Kundalini raises, which it's always rising or you wouldn't be alive, the Kundalini is always burning. Everyone's Kundalini energy. The snake is not asleep. It's not dormant, they say. It's just there giving off and radiating a heat. It does decide to move and rise at some point or awaken or activate. I believe if it does, the soul is in charge. However it was that you reached to that point, many in the Kundalini world will say that there are times where you can not be prepared, you're underdeveloped. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's premature. It's a premature Kundalini awakening. And while I agree with them, I don't agree with them when they make it out to be, or when many thousands of years yogis and master teachers have talked about this. You have to be prepared for this energy. And yes, you do. But now, in the time that we live now, we are not humans of 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. So we're humans of now who have built up more etheric matter due to our many lifetimes that we've experienced, and just have a different stream of consciousness where I had access to information where Kundalini awakening has killed many people for thousands of years. And it wasn't that it killed them, it was the suicidal thoughts or the psychosis that they went into. They may have done something about that, or got put into a mental hospital and was told they were insane in the 1500s, in my recollection, because that was happening, but didn't have an outlet for it, so died in there. So there's many ways that it can show up, but I believe that it is soul directed, and that yes, you can be premature, but it's not just soul directed. There's many different factors. So it can be induced, it can be spontaneous, or it can be astrologically activated. Those are the three main ways Kundalini can happen, but it's all soul infused, all of it, especially astrologically. If you think of it that way, it's timed, because the astrological transits are always going to happen at that time, no matter what. The planets don't move on their own accord. It is a completely organized dance that moves in a synchronized way, and will always in our time. So it's really important to narrow down, did it come on suddenly? Because although mine came on suddenly, there were many things leading up to that for months. Like, I would wake up in the middle of the night not knowing who I was, kind of in a state of panic, and then it would go away and I would reorient. That all happened the months leading up to it happening. And when I say it happening, it was like a wave of energy came over me, and it was like heat, but also my heart dropping into my stomach and feeling this sense of panic, and that feeling just not going away. And it mimicked many different psychological disorders in certain ways. It was the sparkly things in my vision, the voices. There were other things that, once I decided I was not schizophrenic, because I absolutely went there. Once I decided that, I then had to believe there's something else happening here, especially because the center of my forehead and the top of my head felt like it was caving in. My heart was palpitating. It was all where it was very much a spiritual experience. And I had to learn later what that feeling was in my spine and in my lower back. And there were things I already knew. I had heard about Kundalini before this, but you have to understand, while it was happening, I just knew that could not be what was happening for me. No way. This is mental illness. This is some kind of psychotic break, because I went into the psychosis. Mine was spontaneous, but it was also induced by plant medicine, meditation. I was doing Kundalini yoga before that, just not regularly. I wasn't doing anything that would specifically awaken it. Okay. And how come millions of other people have worked with plant medicine and did not have that experience that I experienced? So yes, it got triggered, and I don't believe it was induced. See, induced would be like, you're doing Kundalini yoga, you're meditating every day, you're really focusing on that area of the body and doing pranayama and breath work to really bring the Kundalini energy into other areas of the body. The goal is for it to rise out of the crown and to be fully cleared, embodied, and enlightened, which means you're just full of light. And that's the process of the ascension that we're going on. And there's also an astrological aspect to the Kundalini energy, and that comes from Uranus. And Uranus rules Kundalini. So when I traced back my experiences many years ago with the Kundalini energy, I found 9 or 10, if I'm remembering correctly, major Uranus transits that happened to my chart all within 2 years. So I find that interesting as well, because I didn't even attribute that at the time.
So can you chart someone's Kundalini awakening? Like if you did someone's chart, could you?
Yes, but it would be after the fact. For me, I could not chart or predict when it will happen. I can tell you when it's most likely to happen, which is astrology in general. But usually, most people will experience Kundalini awakening or rising symptoms, because mine was very dramatic and it was a big deal. Some people, it's subtle, it happens over time, it's very blissful, it's connective, they're more open now. Between the ages of 42 and 44 years old, everyone will go through a major astrological transit called Uranus opposition, where Uranus reaches the opposite point in the zodiac where it was when you were born, which means Uranus opposes itself. That creates an energy field, and that is the transit that we call midlife crisis. It is the midlife crisis transit. So on many different things that the Uranus opposition does, that's an example, is that many people will experience symptoms of Kundalini rising during their Uranus opposition, because their whole energy structure is being changed by that. That's why it's a crisis, spiritual emergency.
It's so interesting. I'll make a joke. I'm not gonna make that joke about Uranus and the root chakra and Kundalini rising.
I can go there.
Uranus and Kundalini.
There.
My little 11-year-old.
No, we love that.
So I did want to talk to you. Gosh, there's so much I want to talk to you about. So I wanted to ask you about so define what you see as ascension, because I want to bring back astrology and mediumship into ascension.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about plant medicine. I want to talk about everything.
Yes,
but like
yes,
if you tell us about that would be
yes.
like what's your definition of ascension? How do you experience it? Because some people, it just varies from person to person, you know?
Yes, ascension is, we're always ascending. Everything is always ascending, if you will, or evolving, which is an ascension in and of itself. What we're experiencing right now on the planet is a mass global ascension, as many of you know, but it's also going, what you would say in your human terms, is really fast, more quickly than you can keep up with. And that also has to do with the fact that we're ascending and our consciousness is raising, which is changing the frequency and the perception of time itself. So there's many factors that are making us become aware of this ascension process more so than we would have at any other time. It is also the time to do that, because the planet itself is also ascending, and this was always going to happen at this time. It was, I hate to use the word predestined. It was not predestined. It is programmed to happen at this time, based on, it's really kind of a quantum physics and physics thing that's happening, and it's affecting our consciousness. Ascension is not the process of you leaving your body. Ascension is the process of you being more in your body than you've ever been. And the reason I say it that way is ascension is truly you not getting out of your body, because you've done that so many times in your lifetime, or in the span of the lifetimes that you've lived on any planet in any part of the multiverse. The ascension that I'm speaking of and they're speaking of is the ascension where you are pulling in and clearing out. So as you ascend and your human is raising its vibration to new set points, it can only do that by clearing out old programming, density, traumas, past life experiences, ancestral beliefs. Once those things leave, there's an empty pocket or space within you, if you want to look at it that way, that then gets filled in with more of your soul's light body. Your soul is a very large container of wattage capacity, and it exists, for lack of a better term, in the higher dimensions. And for many eons, you and any physical form that you have been a projection of that soul energy. You've been a projection of that light. And what the soul wants to do is for you, through your experience, to build up more etheric matter. Whether you've killed someone in some life or you were the Dalai Lama and you helped millions, I'm not saying they're equal, but what we're saying is that all of those experiences, no matter what judgment we place on it, creates enough space for the soul to, you could say it's like a memory card or a data bank. And as you clear out those more lower vibrating experiences, frequencies from within you that you activated in other lives, this one, whether it's ancestral or it belongs to you or not, that energy then begins to descend. So there's an ascension process, which you're doing, which is you just reaching new set points and taking your body with you. This isn't about coming out of the body and going into that heavenly place. That doesn't really exist in the way that people think it does. What really does exist is heaven on earth, or heaven embodied into physical form. And so as you raise your frequency, the soul descends, for lack of a better term, and starts to fill up more space within your physical body. This whole process you're going to feel on a physical, psycho-spiritual level. You're going to have ascension symptoms, descension symptoms, which are a result of your system acclimating to these new frequencies.
So now, are you channeling from the Akashic Records? I feel like you have a library card to the Akashic Record that you just hop in and are downloading stuff. Where does your channeling come from?
I don't even really know what I just did, to be completely. Can I cuss on here?
Yes, fuck yes.
Okay. I don't. Well, now that I've asked, I don't have to. But I don't really know. Like, there are times where I do things or say things, and I will say, before I forget this, because she wants me to say it, there is a very high dimensional, and I'm going to say extra dimensional female energy that is here. And I don't feel like she belongs to me. And she's actually got really nice hair. If they have hair, she's really wanting me to, and she's very tall. But she was here from the time we did our prayer when we got on here. And I didn't say anything about it. She I don't want to say you belong. She's here. I don't feel like she
whose
came
fractal
with me.
family? Whose fractal family is she associated to?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but she's I'm not really sure, but she's been here this whole time. I don't know where any of that information came from. And I'm actually just being honest. I'd like to know, because some people, I know when I'm doing mediumship who it's coming from, because there's someone to validate the energy that I'm receiving or the person that I'm seeing. When I get some of this information, it just feels like a computer to me. I don't feel like there's a galactic council giving it to me. Sometimes I get glimpses of things at times, but a lot of times it just feels like if someone has a question or there's information that I need to know, I just have to check in with Siri. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like some, I mean, spiritual Siri.
Spiritual Siri, right.
Like, ask your angels and your guides. I'm like, I know they're there, but I really tune into it like it's a big artificially intelligent computer program that is giving me feedback or giving me information that I'm clicking on and requesting. I don't really sense it as my Viking goddess guide gave me this information, or my Arcturian mother gave me this. I would love some of that information sometimes, because I know I have these connections with these other beings, but I don't always know where it's coming from.
Christopher, I'm very much the same. And
yeah,
and I know that when I really got down to, I use a pendulum a lot, and it was like, I want to know what you are and who you are.
Right.
And so I went through every kind of question I could to make sure it wasn't something malevolent, that it was.
Yeah, we have to get past those.
Get all
things.
that. And it was at the beginning, and all of these preconceptions of what it was. And when I finally got down to it, there was almost this frustrating sigh of, all right, you've got to have, humans have to have this way of identifying, right? That's our thing. We've got to name something. We've got to categorize it. So I am that without name.
Yes, like
Take
a computer
that,
program. Yes, because it is. I think, and this is going to bring me to something before we go on to something else. There have been many psychics and mediums in my field and that I've spoken to and worked with, and it really helped to shape how I view it now. And my information can come through in ways, I'm very visual, very clairvoyant, clairaudient, but sometimes it can come in so holographic or so high dimensional or without so much human essence in it that I felt it was less than. And I said, I had a medium tell me one time that it was actually higher vibrating of me, if you will, to not see them in their whole physical form. When I told Spirit, I don't want to see you. I don't want to see you walking around a corner with a lacy thing on from the 1800s. I don't want to see with a head hanging off. I've seen things and I don't ever want to see it again. I don't want to see any Civil War outfits. I don't want to see any of it. If I see your physical form, I'm going to shit myself and I won't do this anymore. So I told them that 10 years ago, and I think they've abided by that so far. There's other things I've seen, but seeing it that way, my ego said that must be what a medium makes, is seeing them full apparition in the room with you. There were many limiting beliefs or preconceived notions I had to move beyond just to do this work. For instance, being a gypsy or a carnival trick, I was so worried for many years that people were going to think I was making it up or trying to get one over on them. There were many things I had to get through just to be able to be clear enough to do it as clear as I am today.
Did the mediumship come with the Kundalini?
No, it has been there since I was a teenager. And it really amped up after that. Everything amped up after the Kundalini experience. And it was more so that it was just like, you can't ignore it anymore. Rather than it got more, I just allowed it to happen more. I did a reading for someone when I was 19 years old and did not know what I was doing. And everything I was saying was correct, but I also didn't. And I saw him in my mind, but I thought I was making him up. I even left that conversation. We're still good friends to this day. I left that conversation feeling guilty because I felt like I had cold read her and completely bamboozled her, but didn't know how I did that. And did it again several times, especially once I started drinking and smoking weed in my early 20s. Oh, if I had some drinks or I smoked a little bit of weed, I could go up to you at a party and tell you your birthday and what your grandma said. But I usually the next day would think that I made it up.
Made it all up.
I just made it up, and I'm just such a good snake charmer.
I think that when people who are more sensitive start falling into that, I know that I used alcohol as a crutch to get past my own ego to allow me
That's right.
to loosen up to do it.
Yeah, some people say you shouldn't mix spirits with spirit and all that. And no, you shouldn't. I agree, especially alcohol. I could see how it could bring in a lower vibrating energy and the information, all of that. It actually helped me many times. And so did smoking marijuana, because marijuana is a plant medicine. Let's be very clear about that. Just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean that it's not still a plant medicine. Alcohol's not quite a plant medicine.
Right.
Even if it comes from potatoes and agave, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, but I want to recognize a lot of people don't, I guess there's a difference between using it to suppress out of fear.
That's right.
Versus, when I started, I don't do it anymore. But when I started, that was kind of how I got past my own shit to do it.
Yes. Yeah. And that way you said, I can do it with the alcohol. Let's try it without now.
That's try it
better
without.
Than just
and
saying,
that was exactly it.
Yes. Sometimes we need stepping stones.
It's your intention.
Crutches.
It's your
and
intention.
Your intention. Absolutely.
Is my intention to get past my brain chatter so I can do this? That's a different intention than I'm going to get blitzed out of my mind.
Or I want to escape.
Right. It's a different alignment to that vibration. And like me and Shane, my friend Shane that lives, an hour away, we'll drink and sit in a hot tub and give each other readings and whatnot. And we're not attracting anything negative at all. Like
I believe you.
It's like, we
Yeah.
don't have the intention of
I don't believe that spirit is sitting around and going, they're drinking right now and it depresses their nervous system. And so we're only going to give them information that they feel is not good, because that's what they get for doing that.
Yeah.
Yes. And a lot of what I have experienced in my life, pushing past many hurdles in this work, becoming psychic, becoming a medium, becoming a healer, working with plant medicine, so much old stuff coming up, old programming, old patriarchal indoctrination that I didn't even realize was there, old witch wounds around being exposed and being exposed for the evil that I am. I'm like, where's this stuff come from? It's like, it has to go. It's part of my experience, whether I was a witch at one time or been put in an insane asylum, or in this lifetime being told that I was full of shit constantly by one of my parents, and told that the pain that I felt in my body wasn't real. So constantly being unvalidated. And all of that can equate to just not knowing, not really believing that you can do this. And really the foundation in this is your belief. So whatever it takes, Linda, like whatever it takes. We're not advocating for using alcohol to help you become a medium. There are different ways to do it, but also if there are times where that, yes, let's take that out of the equation, because the shame is what perpetuates all of this to begin with. So someone's got to stop.
Cat was my medicine, actually, to get.
Don't you make me cry.
It took Cat pulling me out over a 10-year period, I think, to actually get to that point. Yeah, he was very, God bless him, but.
Well, it's one of those things where you see something in black and white.
With me.
Don't use those words with me.
Don't label me that,
don't call you psychic. Like, you're one of those people that were like,
that word.
Don't call me psychic.
Oh yeah, I've had many people who have been like that. And I'm like, why don't you just own it? You know how you own like being a woman or like being a mother? Like you can own that too. Because sometimes people want to be rebellious, but other times they've got old religious programming living in their DNA. And so even though their parents may not have embedded that in them, society activated what was already there.
Yeah.
About being a Puritan or being.
And I just want to encourage people, the freedom that I felt when I finally did admit those things, when I finally stopped being afraid and ashamed. And if you feel any of that fear or that shame, let it go. Just let it go and see what happens.
Yeah.
See how much easier things get for you in your relationship in your life.
Yeah.
And your relationship with your life.
Yeah. Shame is lying to you. Shame is not you. Shame is an invader from outer space. It is not you.
We love invaders from outer space.
I'm very selective on my outer space invaders. But I wanted to ask you about, speaking of outer space and invaders, because you said you have some implants. And when we say implants, I know you open the door. When people say implants, you think of like the negative implants from like the lower density, how do you say that? But the ETs with an agenda that's not so benevolent. But I trust, your implants are more
we love
etheric,
them too.
or we love them, but I'm not aligned to them.
I send them love because I very well could be connected to some of them. Have gone my own way to undo their evil plan, whatever the case may be. But yes, I've got some kind of mass or something under my tongue that has been there since I was 13 or 14. And it lives right under my tongue on the right side. It's about the size of like half of a grain of rice, if not a little bit bigger than that. Feels round, but it also doesn't feel perfectly round like a BB gun bullet or anything. Yeah, it's oblong. And if I rub my tongue across it this way, I can push it down in here and it disappears somewhere. It's just flat. And then if I pull through a straw or suck on my teeth, it pops back up to the surface and I can move it around.
So it is invisible.
It's not a salivary stone. It doesn't live in the salivary gland. It doesn't block my saliva gland, although, you know, I have always had, since I was a teenager, sometimes my saliva would get a little blocked here. And I don't know if it has something to do with there being something floating around in my body right here, but it usually lives right at the surface and I can feel it at all times. And it just showed up when I was 14. And I saw a documentary with a couple who were parents, or who are parents, of a hybrid child. And the gentleman speaking spoke about having little things under his tongue that he could flip around. And this was back in 2017 when I saw that. And I just remember thinking, whoa, I've described this thing under my tongue for so many years and no one's ever understood. So it's very possible that it's that. I am not claiming 100% that it is, but with all the dreams of abduction and all the spaceships I've seen, like,
oh my God,
once I started seeing spacecrafts often and having dreams and really, you know, every time I do a retreat or have a cacao ceremony, there are ships that fly above. And so I'm not saying they're coming for me, they're coming for whatever mission or whatever work I'm doing, obviously. So to say that it's not an implant is starting to sound ridiculous.
Okay, little known fact, Christopher, I have a little lump underneath that no one's ever been able to explain under my tongue in the right side. You described it exactly. Only mine doesn't move around, but they've determined it's not a saliva stone.
Make it move. I have to make it. I have to force it. Like I'd have to be watching TV or something to make it happen. If I rub along it the right way, it's like it slips down and it becomes flat and I can pull it back up again. But it takes a bit to do that.
Yeah, I've had it examined. They've done all kinds of things to
I
make
tried
sure
to get
it
it
wasn't...
taken out and the office was closed when I showed up. This was when I was 21, when I had my wisdom teeth taken out, and they said, we need to get that out. That's a salivary stone. And I said, well, it's been in there since I was 13. And they said, oh no, it hasn't. Salivary stones are really painful, and we can get that out because you'll have to pass that. And I said, it's been there since I was 14. I'm 100% sure about that. And they were like, there's no way, it doesn't hurt. And I said, it's never hurt.
Yeah. I've had MRIs done, all kinds of things. And they're like, there's nothing there. It's like, yeah, it's been there for most of my life.
Again, I'm not going to say what it is, but again, we're on here talking about all this.
That's the first I've ever heard of that. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up. And
I'm also bringing it up because if at some point there is a galactic federation that wants to speak through me, I'd love to know who it is, even though that's my ego. And also, if this is something under my tongue, I'm putting it out there. This may give someone else more information and they may deliver the information to me at some point. So I used to hide these things. I'm now just ready to let people have it because I would have never known. You would have never known that I was experiencing that. And so that's something that we can ponder on and think about and now pull in more information about it.
And we have one viewer who also has one.
Oh, wow. So it was important to explore today.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I wasn't going to bring that up.
That's wild. Well, and I didn't know that you had all these ET experiences as well. There we go for our part 2 with you. I've seen
ships over 30 times in the past 4 years. And if you ask anyone in my community or people who come to my retreats, one of the reasons they come is because one of their favorite parts is when I get people all outside on the grass and we all lay down. Yes, they are working with sacred plant medicine. Absolutely. But these medicines don't create full-on forms. When you're looking at the stars, sometimes they may flash weird or they'll wiggle a little bit. That may happen. Okay. What we're seeing in these retreats is they're seeing ships flying across the sky. And of course, I'm seeing them too. This is not a hallucination or a group. Anything. I was seeing them before I was doing retreats. They would fly over when I would meditate outside at night. I'd look up and there would be one flying. I didn't know what these were at first. So, but
question, have you had people
showing up.
Have you had people in your retreats that don't partake that also see them?
Yes. Well, no, because everyone partakes because you have to. But some of my co-facilitators who take what you would call a microdose just to put them in the field, like they technically should not, changes to their perception should not even be happening. It's really an energy thing. Take one of these, which would be something you take every single day. And so, yes, the answer is yes. But even I have been in plant medicine retreats with my clients completely not taken anything and seeing things. And I can be around people who are working with plant medicines and start to see what they're seeing or feel what they're feeling. So I can't necessarily say that they weren't also, if we're going to go with group psychosis or hysteria or anything, also joining in on that. But it's a very visceral experience. And the answer is 100% yes, because one of my retreats, the only reason I noticed them was because one of my participants looked up and pointed at them, and there were 3 of them. This was in February, and we had not even started the ceremony yet.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, because I've seen them twice, wasn't on anything both times. So
yes, and
very visceral. Very,
if you're working with plant medicines, the reason that you're more likely to see them when working with plant medicine, especially if you're working with heart-opening medicines like cacao, sassafras, canna, ayahuasca's heart-opening, certain psilocybin strains, grandfather, many different plant medicines really focus on the opening of the heart. That's where it lodges. They go and they open that heart. Once you create heart and brain coherence, you are in the vibrational vicinity, if you will, but vibrational state to communicate and interface with that level of consciousness.
Let's talk about plant medicine, and let us know how you got into it and what you do with it, and just kind of your understanding of it, kind of unpack it for us. I've worked with plant medicine a little bit, and cannabis has definitely been an ally and conversely a crutch, depending on where I'm at and what I'm doing. Like we were saying earlier, it's easy to go, because when I'm on cannabis, I'm like, I can immediately feel your emotions. I know it's from your mom's side, which I can do those things already, but then it's like, I can just get there faster if I just smoke. And it's like, okay, hone your skills. Don't just lean into it.
That's right.
But you go ahead and tell us about your initiation with plant medicine and why you're working with it and all that good stuff.
Well, I have Chiron conjunct the ascendant, which is kind of like having Virgo rising. And I have always been very in tune with nature and animals. And I thought I was a witch when I was a little kid. Okay. I wanted to be a witch my entire life. But I was also Pocahontas and the Little Mermaid and anything that had to do with the animals and following the nature spirits
that's so cute.
and having some type of spiritual journey. So plants have always been a big part of my life. And when I was in my late teens, I really started to get into, as I started to work, getting into like diet, health, supplements, skincare products. I worked in very luxury and high-end skincare brands, cosmeceutical brands. And really what fascinated me the most was plant extracts, the power of what these plants can do in the skin, in the body, supplements. I then became vegan in 2014 and became a health coach. And all during that, though, there was this desire to work with plant medicine. I even joined an ayahuasca church when I was 22, back in 2013. I never went, but I joined because I was going to go and I was going to do this medicine and have this spiritual experience. All of that has always been there. And about 6 years ago, I started to work with psilocybin myself. And then I started to bring friends to my apartment, and I would make sound. I would basically make DJ mixes that were on the more spiritual side, but more creative side. And I would put all these art supplies and different instruments and things down in my apartment. And we would work with the medicine, and I would channel I would really go into this state and have all this information and come out of it. And I just would look at them and be like, holy shit, I'm Abraham Hicks. I thought I needed the medicine to do that, because they were all like, you're psychic. And that was back when I was not psychic. I told them I am not psychic. And it wasn't from a religious perspective. I just didn't know how to do it again. I didn't want that pressure. But that was such a magical experience for us, because that was the first time I had people in front of me where I was looking at them and telling them about things, and it was helping them, and they were drawing what I was seeing. And it was very magical. I never worked with any of those medicines to go to a concert or to party with friends. It was always to have some type of spiritual opening or to create some type of vortex or something. And whatever I was thinking I was doing with it at the time. And slowly but surely, it has just developed into where I am now. And so what I do now is I have a profile of plant medicines, and I work with different medicines that do different things. And so they range from heart to spirit. So we really go off of the Native American medicine wheel. So there's the spirit, the body, the mind, and the heart. Each medicine can take you into a different aspect of that, if not multiple. Some of them really lodge you in your heart. Some of them are just spirit. And some of them are even body, where it wakes up blockages in the body and starts to move things throughout the body. Some of them hit all of them. So it's just about creating a very customized regimen for the participant, whether it's at a retreat. So I do retreats, and they're usually between, like the retreat I have coming up at the end of this month will be about 6 to 7 people. I have one more spot available, so possibly 7, but that's a small group. It's a three night, 4-day intensive. So each night we'll work with different plant medicines, and we'll build off of that. So you get kind of introduced to many different master teachers. I look at these plant medicines as master teachers. So they each have a personality, something to offer you, and you're working with them. They're not working for you. You're working with them. It's a totally different reverence and respect that you have for it. And there's a lot of some of the medicines that are indigenous to certain parts of the world. And so we want to respect that as well and be very respectful to the energy, to the culture that brought it to us. There's a lot of respect that we have for that as well. But it's time to make a lot of this more available, and in a way that is accessible to people. And it can be in a luxury environment. It doesn't have to be on a dirt floor in a yurt in some other country somewhere, shit running down your leg and throw up coming out of your nose. It can be that, my warriors. Go do what you're called to do. It can also be a really gentle, beautiful, blissful, and magical experience where you really connect with others. The retreats are my favorite because the community aspect is insanely healing and so connecting. So a lot of the work I do, although I work with plant medicine, the plant medicines are their facilitators in and of themselves. They are not healing you. They're helping you heal yourself. So I also do private retreats, like for 3 people or individualized, whether it's overnight or over the course of 12 hours. I work with different plant medicines, and so we go in with sound frequency, shamanic healing and drumming, breath work, Shiva Murti healing, Reiki healing. There's many different facets to the work, and so Chironic healing activation is the main energy. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Shiva Murta?
So it's called Shiva Murti or Shiva Murti. We call it Shiva in the West, but they pronounce it in Bali Shiva. It's a Balinese healing modality, and it's incredible. And it's called Shiva Murti, and it's totally different type of healing modality than Reiki, and it's energy. It uses Kundalini. I highly recommend people look it up. It's definitely gaining traction in the energy healing world. So, and it works. It just works. And it's one of the things that I have found that, like, this is one of the things I can say it works, and I'm doing it, and I've had it done, and I'm doing it for others, and it's really incredible. So when you combine all of these things, there's an activation point. There's a portal that clients will walk through, and you're not the same after that. You are literally cracked open, but for some people, leveled up by that experience. And so plant medicine is truly I hate to use the word quick, a faster way to achieve certain states that, although we didn't achieve it on our own, we still received the information. And so integration is so important, and what was received and what happened must be implemented into life consciously, because it'll find its way there subconsciously, but really integrating what was experienced as well is one of the most powerful things you can do in your healing journey. Whether you're receiving high dimensional information or not, many of these plant medicines rewire the brain, the amygdala, the vagus nerve. It's a biological function at that point. There are neural pathways being born, a neurogenesis happening where the aging process is taking you down. These medicines are also anti-aging. Yep. They de-age the brain. Yep. So on top of having some spiritual experience, or which I don't want to negate that, so many people are seeking, oh, if Pachamama could just come down and tell me my purpose. And it's like, what if you just sat here in a state of bliss, looking up at the stars for hours, and you just let the medicine just rewire your brain a little bit? It does not have to be this major thing where then the angel comes down and tells me that I'm going to have this virgin birth and it has changed my life, and now I have to write books about it. It can be really subtle, and that one subtle experience you have with these medicines, whether you're macrodosing in a ceremony or retreat setting or with a healer, or you're microdosing at home with yourself, there's pivots that it can do, and just general physical rewiring and repatterning that happens. So there's so much benefit to plant medicine. And what really calls me is I love nature and plants, and not only through food and diet and health and exercise, now through spiritual and mental and physical healing. They can literally cover it all, and they're spirits. So it's a very spiritual work that you're doing with these medicines, because many people can tend to look at them as pieces of plant fiber and alkaloids and chemical compounds. And it is so much more than that. There are times where you can hold some of these plant medicines in your hand and already start going on your journey and going into your experience. Sometimes in my meditation, I have a necklace that has a piece of ayahuasca on it, preserved and petrified. And I'll just hold that to gain deeper insight. I don't have to consume the brew, because once you work with these medicines, you have access to these spirits for good. You've made contact and connection with them. You can pull ayahuasca or huachuma or psilocybin in like a spirit energy, and it will come.
Yeah.
Cacao,
like cannabis,
like
cacao.
Cannabis. Yes, cannabis is wonderful. Cannabis is a very spiritual tool. It's wonderful in many ways. The smoking it every single day thing is strange. but we've all done it, okay?
Yeah,
Especially if you're a psychic, medium, empath. If you say I don't have an addiction to food, sex, drugs, or alcohol, then I want to know what kind of contract you signed when you got here, because whether you're highly sensitive or not, those numbing agents and that desire to escape usually finds its way into those of us who are healers and mediums and psychics. So let's take the shame out of it. Let's all join together and be like, we haven't smoked in a while, but we kind of want to sometimes. And we definitely at sometimes did it all the time, because most of the best. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. I was going to say, because for me, it's like, because I can be Mr. Chronic, and I've recently like pulled out of that again, and I watched myself in that, and it's like, well, yeah, like it makes I'm leaving this job, which is a big transition for me, but I was like, oh yeah, that made the job so much more bearable because I'm in an altered state, and so my focus is in like 3 different places, as opposed to just this mundane thing that is killing my soul. Like it was a way of coping. And it's like, as soon as I stopped smoking, it was like, oh yeah, I gotta get out of this job. And so it acted as a catalyst, and now I want to go back and just use it like in a more like ceremonial, mentality. It's been such a balance for me.
You can create a ceremony around watching Real Housewives and smoking a blunt. You can create a ceremony for yourself around that, if that is your intention, to enjoy that night instead of sitting there like a zombie. There you can still be aware and still participate, and it is a plant medicine. I worked with cannabis for many years. I also didn't work with it. I played with it. Okay. It was to be with friends. It was to relax. It was to help me go to sleep. There were medicinal aspects. There were also like, I just want to feel different. There was escapism aspects to it. But actually what I've noticed is the more work I've done with plant medicine in the past several years, more advanced forms of plant medicine, I should say, the sweeter and cleaner or more pure energy that I've experienced with cannabis now. Now, when I smoke cannabis, I don't just sit there in kind of a mindless like loop the way that I used to.
That's never how it been. For me, it was never like that. I was always going on journeys.
I could get into loops, and I could get very like where my mind would do crazy things, and I was like, make this stop. I didn't always like cannabis. Marijuana was really hard for my body. Sometimes it made me feel anxious. It made me feel jittery. When I smoke it now, it does take me on a journey. I will have like, oh, I see why I did that. And I'm like, it's a totally different experience I have with it now, after my awakening and after the past 4 or 5 years. I mean, there was a time where I couldn't smoke weed at all for several years. I was afraid to, because of my awakening, because of not wanting to induce whatever panic that was.
It amplified it
was
too
so
much.
severe. I just couldn't. So then when I started to reintroduce it, I found that I have a totally different relationship with cannabis now as a spirit, rather than what is this going to make me feel like? There's now an energy that comes with it. That was always there, but I was not tapped in to feel it or sense it before.
Yeah. And I like that it's an individual experience. I always bring it back down to a relationship. Am I being codependent with Linda? Am I being codependent with cannabis? Like, am I being codependent? That's on me. That's not, it's not cannabis's fault that I'm showing up with, take it away, and also, make it better.
Can I open to receive the healing of this medicine? Because a lot of times I would smoke it and feel badly about it, or smoke it and feel like, why do I need something to help me sleep? Why do I need something to help me go down at night, because I'm constantly wanting to do something? Why do I need? Why don't you just receive the assistance now and enjoy it, and not worry about always needing it or whatever kind of.
Be in the moment. Be in the moment with your relationship.
Yes. Oof, I needed to hear that.
Good. I'm glad something
I hope
I said
we're tying
was good for
the
you.
astrology and ascension and I want to really,
mean,
astrology, ascension, Kundalini, aliens. I do want to implant medicine. It all goes together.
it
You know, the
does.
astromediumship experience definitely all comes together in a
It's-
cohesive way. I'm hoping I'm
Oh no, it's great. I think this is fantastic. I feel like
illustrating that.
removing those artificial divides and saying there is no divide, it's all woven in. It's a tapestry, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to
What
talk
I,
to you. Oh, go ahead,
yeah,
Linda.
go
You're
ahead.
muted.
I was just going to say we're having a kind of a side conversation too, because like for me, when I tried it, my body rejected it 100%. Got lockjaw, had migraines for 3 days,
Oh, wow.
everything tensed up in my neck. It was just awful. Thought it was,
With cannabis? I thought it just put you
yeah,
to sleep. Oh, I thought you
no,
just,
but
okay.
eventually, yeah. But I mean,
Oh,
it took days to recover. I thought,
oh
oh, it's all in
God.
my head. Tried it one more time, exact same thing with
yeah,
a
I've
different
had
strain.
very negative experiences
So
with
it was like,
cannabis.
okay, I don't need that. And so I've had all the experiences I've had without substance. So it's not required, because I
Right.
think that came up in the conversation. It's not required, but it's an
Right.
opportunity for some to choose that direction and open up. And yeah, so
Yes,
Like I can't wear
absolutely.
purple. I look horrible in purple. Like, you know what I mean? There's certain things that aren't good for certain people, you know?
Plant medicine is not in alignment with everyone at this time, and I 100% agree with that and support that idea.
and
Because
I was going to say also, I know I have an addictive personality. Like, just look at my cell phone and my relationship with it. And so that's another reason I've never smoked a cigarette, because I have a feeling if I did, I would not stop.
yes, and
But
there
we
are
can be
certain,
addicted to food. We can be addicted to exercise. We can, it can show up in so many different ways. So that self-awareness is really important.
we can also be addicted to certain emotional states and
Yes.
certain emotional chemicals themselves. So humans are built for addiction, if you will. So you're right about that. I just want to point out for people watching, though, many of these medicines, like tobacco, nicotine, should be smoked during ceremony to keep you in your body. It's very grounding. And that's why it grounds people and brings them back. It's just the incessantness of it. And nicotine is very addictive. Marijuana can be addictive because of the dopamine agonist, but most of the medicines I use rewire and reprogram addiction. So marijuana, you can smoke and just really just go there. Overusing certain plant medicines like psilocybin or sassafras, you can't overuse them. You'll hurt yourself. It's not like cannabis, and you won't like the way you're feeling. There have been many times where you're working with certain plant medicines and you just don't feel good, and that's because it's bringing something to the surface, or it's allowing something to move through the body. You feel that discomfort. So when you get into the realm of the heart openers and the more psychedelic plant medicines, you're actually dealing with something that would actually curb your addiction or reduce the addictive tendency of the brain. So that was something I was going to mention anyway. So thank you for bringing that part up.
Well, and also, having a husband who grew up in Haight-Ashbury in the 70s, his advice was very strong and very, it's very important in your state of mind when you go in. And it's very important to be with people who you feel safe with.
Setting is the most important thing, because if you go in with an intention and leave your expectations at the door, whatever will happen and is supposed to happen. And if you feel safe and comfortable in that environment, then if it gets a little weird or if it gets uncomfortable, you feel held so that you can have that experience. Just like a child in a crib can toss around and throw a fit, but it's safe in there. It can have whatever experience it needs to have. It's held. As long as you have those things, you'll have the experience you're supposed to have. Because what I actually notice most of the time in certain retreats I've been to or certain settings I've been, that people don't have the experience they're looking for. And it's not negative. It wasn't as much as they wanted. Many people have expectations on plant medicine, and you need to let it go. If you, my biggest experiences that I've had, or most influential, and I'm going to call them big, have been when I didn't have any expectations like the other times. But I'll tell you, some of the most magical ones were the really subtle ones where I wasn't having a major download or memories coming up or this major journey. There have been times where I just stared at the fire for 3 hours and thought nothing. And thought in those moments, it must not be working, but didn't realize that I was feeling peace. Literally feeling peace and complete presence for hours. But thought that wasn't enough because
expectation,
ancestors weren't showing me something I did in another life that I can now deal with and pay the consequences for, so we can just move on. Whatever kind of story I decided to create around what it was supposed to do or what I wanted it to do, it's a formula when working with plant medicine. You've got to have really high quality medicine. You have to have somebody who knows what they're doing. You have to someone who's connected with the plants and with nature. You have to be connected with nature and plants. You have to follow a dieta. You have to prepare before you even enter that space. There's a lot that goes into coming to a retreat or having that type of experience with me or someone else. And if you get that formula as cleaned up as possible, it's life-changing.
And to tie that back into Ascension, just so we are kind of have full circle there. I mean, my feeling with that is that, again, the whole Ascension process is being able to embody who you are completely, and the plant medicine is allowing those illusions, the ego, the wounds to come up and be dissipated, integrated, revealed, whatever that is important for that journey. And thus you're allowed to embody the rest of you, which isn't about, like you said, it's not about going higher and I'm staying higher. It's about embodiment of the higher within.
Yes. And there's many different facets that get activated of your mechanism by plant medicine. And think of it this way, a couple weeks ago, I started to get a sore throat. So I immediately went to my cabinet and I got out my oil of oregano, my echinacea, all of it, the silver, colloidal silver. And within 2 or 3 days, it was gone, and I have been fine since. Now, I could have let my body do that on its own, which may have taken a week or whatever, but I used some assistance, basically. My body's designed to do it on its own, but it's also designed to work in harmony with things around me because it's made of the same molecules. Like I share DNA with some of these plants. So it's about being in harmony with what you're working with and knowing that it's there to assist you and help you. And it's a healing mechanism. Yes, I could have done it on my own. There are people that say, and these are spiritual people, most of the plant medicine, I don't want to say kickback, but kind of resistance has been from people who would consider themselves very spiritual, and they love to tell me that they don't need that. I don't need that.
Yeah.
Because I have achieved a connection with that you obviously have not, since you need plants to help you get there. And I always tell people, it's funny that you don't need that, but you also could go out every morning and just stare into the sun for 20 or 30 minutes. And eventually you won't ever have to eat anything. All of your muscles will regenerate, all your cells, all of the nutrients will biosynthesize. You don't even need to eat food. And then you can save all this money. And they just think that's ridiculous. So the sun creates the energy in the fruit, which is where it's getting it from. And then you eat the fruit to get that energy when you could just stare in the sun, sure. So know that you're built to need things on this planet. And
to work in cooperation with those things.
Yes. I totally am supportive of people who have achieved these altered states of consciousness, or who have an agreement with themselves and don't need it. And I don't think I need it either. It's kind of like, I'm going to use that example again. I could absolutely go out every day and just stare into the sun. My eyes would be fine. They'd actually age less. All the studies have been done. There's so much research on it. I do enjoy blueberries and spinach and gluten-free bread. I'm allowed to have it, and I will continue to do so. And that's my means and way in which I get my nutrients and my fuel. So needing something, let's just take that out of the equation altogether in this. Utilizing something or working with something is really beneficial. So I want people, when they're thinking of working with plant medicine, this is helping you ascend, not because you need help to ascend, but because you can. There are ways to ascend with more grace and ease. Look at it that way, because you did not have to come into this lifetime and go through that physical abuse that you went through. And because you went through that, there's a little bit of a tear or an impact in your neural pathways and in your nervous system. We can go in and actually kind of smooth some of that out, because you didn't necessarily choose that. Yes, you may have chosen it on a soul level, of course. But if you already came in with all these things that keep getting in your way and lowering your vibration, or you feel like I didn't have a choice in this, then you can have a choice by asking the healer for help, by going to the retreat, working with the plant medicine, changing your diet. There's many different ways that you can heal yourself. Plant medicine's one of them. And if you approach it as a way to thrive, instead of I need this and it's the only thing that can get me help, and the plant medicine's going to show me what I need. No, it's already there for you. It's just going to clear some of the fog away so you can see things more clearly, which is why a lot of people don't want to do it.
Yeah, they don't want to go and see their shadow.
And I totally understand what they're talking about. I've been there, I've been there when they handed me Mama ayahuasca, and I looked at it and said, shit.
What am I doing? What am I doing?
Oh, I remember it. I remember that first time going, this is it. And being scared shitless. And I would do it again. And have. So I've also had experiences with these medicines that I do not want to have again.
Right. I mean, that's the other thing to be aware of.
Those were some of the best ones that I did. I'm not considering that a bad trip. I've had what I would call a bad trip, where I felt like I was stuck in it and that I did not have a healer present. I was using psilocybin on my own many years ago, and had people with me, but it decided to do something on me I was not expecting, and there was no one holding the space. I did not feel held because I was the holder. And there were just certain things at that time, 5-6 years ago, that I just didn't know and just wasn't acclimated to. And that I considered a bad trip. And if I look back, if I had just sat there and let it happen, it would have passed and I would have been fine. I believed in that moment I was never going to be okay again. So that the plant medicines will walk you into a room where one of your beliefs lives and lets you just get to know that belief, shuts the door behind you and locks it so you can't get out, and just says, get to know that thought pattern. So while you may even say that was horrible, don't want to do that again, you know now how awful that thought pattern actually is to hold in your system. So you can either complain about your bad trip or tell people you didn't have the experience you wanted, or you can now say, I will not choose that anymore because it put it straight up in your face like that. So there's actually a lot of benefit to having those negative experiences. And I look at some of them as my initiations. Like, if I could do that, I can handle this now. Because surrender, one of the main reasons that I have, or one of the main outcomes or benefits that I have found with plant medicine, is that it has allowed me to surrender in my life many times, in times where I was like, there's no net. I don't see a net down there, but I'm going to jump because I jumped during that plant medicine journey. I jumped when ayahuasca told me to jump. I jumped during that psilocybin experience, and it actually was okay. I actually laid there and let it happen, and it wasn't as bad as I was thinking it was going to be. It was rough, but actually I'm okay now. I actually made it out okay. And I now know what it feels like to surrender. I didn't know that before. There's certain aspects of these medicines that will help you, like riding a bike, understand what something feels like. Because when Christopher tells you to surrender, you think, oh, let your hands go loose or kind of breathe deeper. You're still trying to surrender. What does actual surrender mean, where you fully let go and just become nothing? There's something terrifying about that, but there's something waiting for you on the other side of that.
Well, and just to collaborate with that, Oregon, where I live, is the first state.
We love Oregon.
First state to actually have
Decriminalize.
psilocybin clinics. And they are specifically working with people with deep trauma, people who are dying, to help them in that process and to come to terms with it.
And that's just psilocybin, and I hate to say just, but that's working with most likely the molecule from a magic mushroom. Not even magic mushrooms. A lot of times they're using a lab created psilocybin,
right?
Just like ibogaine or certain ketamine, psychedelic compounds that are made in a lab rather than coming from a plant, but still incredible results for PTSD, trauma recovery. So this is where I'm coming from it. In the Chironic healing world, Chiron is the wounded healer, and we all have a Chiron energy within us. And as the embodiment of Chiron, I feel it is my purpose and it is my destiny to help unlock what that wound is. And I can be very triggering to people, and I hate that, but it's part of that archetype. As that triggering happens, what we must know is once the trigger happens in the Chironic healing activation map, if you want to look at it like a map, first you have to know yourself. You have to understand your astrological and human design blueprint. We're going to bring those two things together. We're really going to help you understand from your personality, your ego, all the way to your spiritual purpose and your general direction. What is it that you're doing here? Why are you here? Because just being told that is sometimes permission enough for some people who've been so diluted by their parents, family, and life experience that they've forgotten who they are. Sometimes it just helps you to remember, oh, I came in with these abilities and I came in to be this. I want to be this. That means there's a framework. There is a blueprint. All I have to do is follow the map and I'll become that which I'm supposed to be or want to be. I'm on board. Once you have them on board, you then identify where are the blockages, where are the limiting beliefs, where are the aspects of self that need some soothing, and most of all, where is the trauma? And where is the wound living and where is it most activated? Once we know that, that's when we go into the energy healing portions. So a Chironic healing activation with me can look like a giant plant medicine ceremony just for you. And there's a lot of breath work. There's a lot of walking you through different aspects of self. I mean, it can show up different for everyone. But what I have found most, and because not everyone gets the same medicine either, I could give both of you the exact same type of psilocybin strain, and both of you, one of you go outside looking at the stars, wanting to touch the trees, the other person going into a really deep dream state. I mean, it can do two different things to people. On top of the fact that we've got 7 different types of psilocybin that we're working with. So there's a really customized, intuitive experience that you have with these plant medicines as well. So we're going to hit the physical body, the astral body, the energy bodies. We're working with different aspects of that. What I say to these medicines is I come in, this person already understands themselves. We understand what we're working with, how to work with it. We also know where the wound is more so. So we're not just aiming at nothing. We're really being intentional about this. And we're going where the largest blockages are now, because we know that if you come to a healing activation with me, it's a domino effect. Some people come to my retreats and I've had people who come to retreats say, That was good. I had a good experience. It wasn't as big as I wanted it to be, where there's been that energy with that person. They were a little disappointed. And then the week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, they go through this major upheaval in their life. Sometimes the experience at the retreat or in the setting is just the cracking open. Rumi said that the cracks are where the light enter you. The wound is where the light enters you. So my purpose is just to create an opening. And as that opening is created, lots of stuff will release, like steam. Energy knows the path of least resistance to exit the system. But energy also knows the path of least resistance to enter the system as well. So you have to understand that you may not be able to integrate, embody, and experience what you thought you were ready to experience when you did the medicine, but you don't have to continue working with the medicine for it to drop in later. We call it drop-ins. So there's so many benefits to it that last for the rest of your life.
And it's still in your auric field. You've still initiated a relationship by saying hello and shaking hands. So there's going to be a reverberation. Right.
But most people will have an experience. So I've had people have psychedelic experiences 2 weeks later when they're coming out of sleep, because they're still integrating and that experience is still happening, where they're like, this feels strange. I feel kind of out of my body a little bit. Your system is still trying to orient what happened, even though you were so in control of yourself during the retreat or during the ceremony. You were so good at acting like a good church girl on Sunday. You decided to cross your arms and not open yourself to what was going to come up. So it came up later in the privacy of your bedroom because it knew where to go. So it doesn't always, some people can come to retreats and feel like, oh my gosh, I love being around all these people. Other people are a little put off by that, and they can be very guarded, and it would take them a week to really let it all down. So know that the initial experience is not when the magic happens. It's what you do with it later, and it's what you allow to drop in later in divine timing.
That's great.
And one last thing about that, how this ties into ascension is that once you've completed this chironic activation, or the way I've choreographed it to be, once you've initiated that, you've walked through that portal, if you will, you are basically choosing a new timeline. And and this new timeline is more easily chosen by you because you don't have all these other tendrils and forces and influences pointing you at the timeline that was most probable for you already before you got there. And you wanted this. It's why you came here. So you're the one who's about to do this. But also there's a rewiring that just happened as well. And these plants know what to do. They're adaptogenic. So they're going to go into the system and identify blockages and go there. They're not just going to just activate the entire system. It's like a smart technology. So the ascension comes when you're clearing all of that out and you're opening yourself up to this new information. Aren't you basically dancing the dance of ascension? So you're basically allowing it, or catching the flow of the ascension process and allowing it to happen with more grace and ease. You're not making it happen. It's already happening. You're clearing out on purpose so that life doesn't have to do that for you while you're at work, or when you're at home yelling at your partner and don't know why you're upset all the time right now in your life, because you're going through a healing crisis, because something from the past is coming up, but you're just not aware of it. You're very aware of it. Working with plant medicine, especially, just being around other psychics and mediums can make you psychic and open your third eye. Yes. So working with these plant medicines, being around in communities with other light workers and starseeds, empaths, and psychic people allows those gifts to come online for you as well. And so you can really step in to that version of you that you're trying to create, or that you really already are. A lot of this, because it's adaptogenic plants and we're working in the higher dimensions, all it's doing is helping to reorient, unclog, and move things back into alignment so that you're basically just working in the most efficient order. You're not being fixed. You're basically being unbroken.
Being brought back into wholeness.
Yes.
we have got like 4 minutes left with you officially, and you just brought up timelines, which was one of my questions.
Of course.
But I want to be really respectful of people's time. I don't know if either of you can go any longer, or if we should go ahead and wrap it up. You can go longer, Christopher. Yeah, check what you got on your agenda for today.
Yes, I can for 30 minutes. I do need to use the restroom real quick.
Okay, that's cool. You know what? Hey, you know what, Linda, how are you?
I'm fine.
Okay. Because I could use a bio break. Do you want to talk to people about what you do? Because that was one of the questions where people are like, they want to hear about your work, and we can take a little bio break. It's
okay, you can take a
I'm
bio
use
break and I'll talk about what I do for.
Yay!
So the question came up on my flares and being overstimulated by the environment. And this is kind of a combination of several different modalities that different healers in my life have brought to me. And, it's one of those things that you find what works best for you. But what I will do is very intentionally send down roots, energetic, trailers, energetic, cords into the earth with gratitude, with love, to actually anchor myself into the earth, finding a spot within the earth that I can both send love to and release things to that can, and with the intention that it can be recycled, that it can, go from poo into compost and then into fertilizer, right? So let that transmute. So the first thing is creating that deep grounding. And I literally feel in my body, my energetic body just drop when I have felt that. And then from there, I allow that love to come back up from Mother Earth through me. Often I will just, if I'm having a difficult time kind of letting that flow, I will let it spin and just picture and hear the word love and let it go through every chakra, every level of my energetic field. Let it clear things out as it moves up and opens up everything, and let it go up through every chakra, and then let it come through the crown, let it go through the star, let it go up to source, to your star origin, to your source origin. Let that open up. It's usually by that point, for me, a white light. And I allow that connection to take place from below and above, and then bring that down, allow the messages, allow the energy, allow the healing to come back down in that same form. And it's almost creating that conduit from earth to heaven. You are that conduit. I will also look at where my energetic bubble is and think of it maybe as a light bulb that you have around you that is usually, maybe arm's length, depending on where you are. The more out there you are and not in control, the further it goes. Pull it in so that you're not picking up everybody else's stuff, and almost create a tube around you. Pull that in. So instead of this big old round bulb, you're more like a fluorescent long bulb of energy source with the intention that nothing that is less than your highest good come in, and that everything that goes out is light and love. And set that intention for yourself every day of sending love down, sending love up, being that conduit, releasing anything that's not in your highest good, letting it go, and having it be replaced from above with that love and light. And you can choose or feel into the colors. And again, opening each chakra to the perfect size, rotation, radiance for your highest good. And when I can do that, then I actually I feel like I radiate at a completely different level. And that's when I go around and love bomb everybody and have them turn around. I'm like, what was that? It's one of my favorite things to do. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, you're such a gift. I love that. Well, so thank you for doing that. I'm so glad everyone's down for a little bit of a extended conversation, just because I want to talk about timelines. It's one of those things where I really try to grapple with comprehending timelines. And I certainly have experiences of things. I feel like I pop in and out of different timelines just through the day sometimes. But I'm like, okay, is that just you making that up? And I'm wondering if you would kind of break down your understanding of how timelines work, and then elevate that or integrate that with the whole ascension situation.
Yes. So there are, as many of you know, infinite numbers of timelines that are happening. Not all of them are active, but they're available. Some of them are active and you're just not conscious of it. So there's many different facets of that, because each timeline you go down can branch off into another timeline off of that. And it's like an infinity symbol and a tree all mixed together. It's so complex that the brain would not have the capacity to understand. But as you're ascending, the possibility for the timelines that you're choosing also become different. And you could say that you are bouncing between timelines every millisecond of every day, just choosing similar ones that are close or in vibrational resonance with the one right before it. And that is true. And these milliseconds and these snapshots are happening. But the timelines, what they're showing me right now is timelines are actually getting longer or more available. Oh, so actually, if we want to go down the timeline hallway, what's actually happening now is larger timelines are collapsing into, or you could say many different timelines are collapsing into one, and we're currently choosing. So we have individual timelines that can all intersect and interplay in some way, because it's a web, not a straight line, and it's cyclical like that. Things can come back, or some kind of change you make in your timeline can show up in someone else's timeline, even though they're choosing it for themselves, because of the web and the way everything is connected. But also, as we're ascending, as you choose your individual timeline, if it is, I hate to say if, they're not liking that, when it feels like it is of your highest good or your highest excitement, any of those terms can apply. You will find your way into the timeline that has already fallen into the larger timeline, which we can call the 5D or the new earth or the new reality that we're creating or that is already being created. As you're ascending, you also have more ability to choose consciously which timelines you're going to activate. And a timeline does not mean a different reality. It means a different thread or conscious focus. Let's take the quantum leap or the time travel aspect out of it, or this kind of linear from point A to point B. Timelines are literally a trajectory or a point of focus, because if I shoot this way, it's going to land somewhere exactly over there. If I point it slightly this way, it's about pivoting. What plant medicine does is allows you to pivot enough to choose an entirely new timeline. All of life is like that in some way. I could have turned left today, I could have turned right, but what made you turn left? Was it your autopilot, or were you inspired to do so? This is the conscious awareness that we're telling you to become aware of, more so because if you can come face to face with life, and as it starts to deliver things to you, you start choosing more what you want from a conscious place, you're going to find that it lines up with this fifth dimensional or this larger vortex of energy that is being created. Because many of us, I understand, many of us are actually right now being pulled into a new timeline in our life, and it's pulling us really dramatically out of an old one. And that process, if we did not have the ego or the type of society that we're in, because we love ego, ego is necessary, but the ego tendency to freak out when it isn't a part of the plan or something's off here, you want off of this timeline that you've been on. Trust me. Okay. You want off of it, which is why you're here listening to this or we're having this conversation. So coming off or being off your path is exactly what needs to be happening right now, because that's where the true surrender, if we're going to circle all the way back to the source of this conversation and what's really fueling it, is can you surrender to the changes that are happening? Can you trust that the timeline that you thought was going to be yours, or the trajectory that you were moving down, because that's all that it is no longer or was never truly right for you? You were always going to reach this point and say to yourself, this isn't in alignment with me. It was always going to happen. So to detach from this program can be very scary, because right now there's not a lot to tether to. But you have to trust that that magnetism is taking place, and that if you can just let go, which is really hard, I'm not telling you that it's easy. I want to really, really emphasize that surrender in the mechanism of the human that wants to be in control is like telling you not to breathe at first. So please know that there's a resistance that you have to push through. And the resistance does not always show up as, I have resistance in my body. It can sometimes show up with you outside screaming and snot running down your nose and shaking in the shower from crying so hard, and it being really messy and really going all the way to rock bottom again. Because people say, how did I end up here again? I've been through this before. You've never been felt this low and had this much information or tools available to you, first off. But also in your life, you have been here before. So you know your way around here. Let's do something different. That way you don't climb this far down ever again. Because if you've gotten this far down, and we're talking emotionally, that just means that you're coming down here to play with something, and that if you can really use that tension, people are not using their lows or their ebbs as they should. Use that tension to contract yourself further back, because all you then have to do is let go and surrender. And like a rock in a slingshot, it's just going to fly that much further right back up. It's the resistance that's holding you down there. So your buoyancy wants to let you fly to the surface. So the surrender part is huge, but do you know how to do that? Because we love to talk about it. We love to say, let go and let God. We love to say, oh, let go of that. Why don't you let that go? And nobody really knows what that means, because we know what it means when your hand releases something. But even when you let go of something physically, you may not have let it go emotionally or mentally, especially if you're always obsessing about it or feeling like it's missing or lost. So there's something about actual acceptance and surrender. That is the energy of Chiron. Because many people think, well, Chiron will show me how to heal this and get rid of it. No, a lot of times Chiron will show you how to see the art in that birthmark that you were born with, not to laser it off.
Kat and I talk a lot about spiritual bypassing, wanting to move past that without going through it, without
this is a tricky,
facing
go ahead.
No,
This is a tricky conversation when you get to the spiritual bypassing, because I also am a big proponent for the archetype Lilith. And Lilith is a big part of my work. And so my retreat coming up is looking for Lilith. And it's all about accessing that divine, feminine, independent cave woman. She's not compromising because she grunts. She knows what she wants because She's very animalistic in that way. So there's a part of us that I say, you have to face it. First, you have to understand where it's living, and you really have to face it. But a lot of times there are people who are going to the other extreme of it. They're not spiritually bypassing, they're really going right into it, and they're letting it consume them, or they're taking it to the extreme.
Yeah.
It's about identifying, I've got this energy that wants to be expressed, and right now I'm playing around with the idea of being more vocal and stating my needs. I may not have needed to do that with the cashier at the grocery store. I could have saved her whatever I just gave to her when I was letting my Lilith out in the line at the grocery store. I could have saved that for my journal or at my therapy appointment. So there are times where it's going to come out when it needs to, but let's pull back, because spiritually bypassing is necessary at first. Many people in their awakening and their ascension process will spiritually bypass because it hurts too much to not do that at first. Okay, it's the training wheels. So spiritually bypassing, you'll notice, is kind of like a one of the levels you get to after you awaken. And there's no trajectory or roadmap that matches everyone, but I used to do it being super positive about everything. There are times where I'll be on the phone with people now and I'm not feeling so well about something, or I need to process something, so I need to speak it out as it's happening inside. Inside, it sounds like no one wants me, no one cares about the work that I'm doing. This may not be right for me anymore. And the people on the receiving end of that are like, crazy, you're incredible, you're amazing. I'm not feeling that right now, so you saying that's pissing me off. Although you're being correct, and I actually have an awareness that you're correct and that I am amazing and that I can see where you're coming from, I kind of want you to just go here with me, because you're
Right.
trying to pull me out of it. And there is a little needle that I'm trying to find in this haystack. Can you just hold the space for me to find this needle? Because there's a reason why I keep finding myself back down here. And it may not be because you told me to feel better. And it may not be because I could have been thinking something positive right now. Because here's what happens. And this is where you just have to use your body pendulum, your intuition, and your healing work. You will get triggered. Your healing journey will take you into many different places. As it takes you into the darker places or into those darker emotions, it's about releasing them. This is where Lilith comes in. It's about saying, this I'm feeling right now, and I'm going to let it out as I'm feeling it. I have been outside in this yard taking hammers to the ground, clawing and screaming and raging, and also thinking, if any of my clients saw me right now, oh my God, embarrassed, but then having to remind myself again, no, you're doing it. You're doing what you're telling other people to do. But
You're
my
living
ego
it.
can also kick in and try to spiritually bypass and be like, shouldn't you be done with this? As if the embodiment of Chiron will ever be done with healing. I mean, so I still have to catch myself in my own expectations and thoughts around these things. But what I have to do is first of all, I have to say, I'm angry right now. I mean, sometimes I just have to be angry, because there are times where something makes me angry and I feel like I don't have time for this, or I don't want to feel like this, or I try to logically get myself out of it. And I say, they didn't mean that. They didn't know that they were doing that. My animal felt invaded upon, offended. Something got in the way of what I was trying to do. Someone got out in front of me in front of traffic, and my animal, that was you getting out in front of my next meal or something in the wild. There are many aspects of our humanness that can come out, and then we shame it and push it back down and say, no, actually, it's okay. Let's all flick each other off in traffic. Let's yell at each other. I think a lot of what you're sensing in traffic is everyone trying to just get it over with and be okay with it, which is causing a tension. So saying, I'm feeling this, letting it out, is definitely the best way to doing it instead of spiritually bypassing. But sometimes it is okay to then, once you've released that emotion or once you've set with that, really start looking, where do we go from here? Because that's the spiritual way through rather than
Right.
bypassing it.
Right.
Okay. It is okay. What you're doing when they're bypassing, what they're doing is they're skipping a step and they're skipping the pain.
Yes.
And people mean well. When people come up to you and they're just like, but look at the house and look at this that you have. And look, you have all these people wanting you to do this. They really want you to be okay again because they want to be okay around you. It's not, and they're trying to support you in the best way they know how, because honestly, a lot of spiritual bypassers, if we want to call them that, are actually seeing you as you want to be seen. So
they're seeing the truth
that's
of you,
very,
but not with compassion. They're seeing the truth of you, but not with you from your place of brokenness.
that's right. That's right.
And I really feel
And
like
they're wanting
Abraham,
to go ahead.
I was,
Yes,
I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, I just really feel like Abraham is a huge proponent of spiritual bypassing. She's so good about like saying positive, positive, positive. Oh, you had a bad dream? Don't think about that dream. Oh, you're not here to help Gaia. You're like, just like, Jesus Christ. Like, no. But
I
that's my little
think at the
tirade
fundamental,
about
no, I
Abraham.
agree. And many of Abraham's teachings, because that was one of the things I started with many years ago, was Abraham. Many of those teachings still haunt me today because although I think they're 100% correct, not all of us are 100% in alignment with those teachings or up to speed with that. Because I think what they're talking about is the end goal, but it also, I've had a lot of years of wondering why Abraham never went into the shadow work or why they never went into facing all of these things. Because I'm like, I
It's
agree.
limitation of the channel. I feel like there's a limitation there, but I guess I might have judgments. So,
Like
but I
I
No,
just
was
see
gonna say,
stuff.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my trigger that comes up is that bypassing, when my personal belief is that there needs to be a balance between releasing something with ease, and there may be a time for bypassing it because you're not ready to be
Right.
there, and releasing
Right.
it without
That's
without
right.
it coming to the conscious level.
That's right.
But
That's
also
right.
the time where it's time to dig deep and
Yes, and
dig into that
what plant
pile.
medicine does and what the work that I do, I've noticed, kind of goes with that. A lot of times it does bypass. It's like nothing big happened tonight, and it was like, what did you want to happen tonight? And maybe the peace that they felt or the connection they felt with someone wasn't big enough, so they've decided to be disappointed, even though they felt connected to someone more than they have in years. Their ego has decided that. It'll come up later when it's supposed to, and it usually does. Things will drop in. I had a client who's never had a panic attack before have a panic attack after one of the retreats. Not one of my greatest selling points. But it was also, she still has not had one since. But I think what happened was there was so much that was released during that she didn't show. She kept it very, she was
Close to her chest.
very much not going to let us see all that. Although that was the place to do that, but everyone's different. So it came up for her very suddenly a week after the retreat. And she's been fine since. It was just, it got her attention. It got her attention when it needed to. She would not have been able to handle all of that in front of us. It may have made it worse that there were other people looking at her when it happened. And she on it, she also did not have a panic attack. That was more of she had a big experience where a lot of emotion came up. It wasn't like she couldn't breathe or anything. It was just more, I'm going to call it a meltdown, if you will, which and she needed it during, but also maybe the medicine even knew she needs to be away from the group to truly do it. Like the medicine is very smart as well. We were working with spirits. So there's something to be said about really facing it spiritual. And when we use the term spiritual bypassing, I think we're using it many different ways. What we really are not proponents of, if I may say so for all of us, is using positivity or the desire for a positive outcome to negate or to erase what has already been and to invalidate what's already happening. What and we're not proponents of that because that does nothing. But also from Abraham's perspective, should we continue to focus on the wound and should we continue to focus on that which ails us, it can and will bring more of it.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't mean it brings more disease, but it just brings more thoughts of it, more people who are also not feeling well. So I don't just get where they're coming from. I do believe in their essence, in its essence, they're correct. I believe that them not coming down to our level sometimes doesn't help. Okay, because
Yeah.
we need to be told it's okay to cry and scream. And also, there are many people who are afraid to go in the shower and cry and scream because they're like, what am I attracting right now by doing this?
Right. It becomes this whole thing about like, I've got to control everything and make it positive and good.
It's them being in control and not surrendering. You just tied the bow on all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think
Truly.
that like, go ahead.
Well, no, it's please. I'm just commenting on what you're saying.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just think that, you know, I see that time and again where there's a lack of empathy. And as soon as you don't give me empathy, I don't have time for you.
Right. Yeah.
So.
And I'm going to add a couple more elements to that.
Please do.
That it is also how different people relate to their world and express in their world. So I want to, because I know for me being a healer, like it took a lot and it's taken a lot. And I still have to remember it's their journey. I want to heal them because, as you said, it would make me feel better.
Yeah.
Not because that's where they want to go with their journey.
Right.
And it's up to them to take those steps. And if they ask for help, great. But again, allowing them to have their journey has been a really difficult lesson for me.
It's been the most difficult lesson for me.
And
as a performer, that's so hard because you're supposed to go out there and entertain. They're supposed to be happy and clapping when it's over. And this is not something I can control.
Right. The other part of that is how people's brains work. So something that I learned as I started experiencing more of those ADHD symptoms that I was able to mask my whole life. For some reason, now I can't. But I did realize that something I've done my whole life was try to relate to someone with stories that were similar, where a person might look at that and say, this isn't about you, it's about me. Thank you very much. In my mind, I was saying, I'm relating to you. Here's how I'm relating to you.
Exactly.
It's not about me. It's actually about you, but it sounds like it's about me.
Right.
And so be conscious of how people relate to empathy and having empathy with someone, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. That's a perfect point. Yeah. I have had issues with that because I like to give anecdotes and tell people, oh, yes, I experienced it in that way so that they felt, because when people do that with me, I feel understood.
Right.
I feel like, oh, this person gets it. I'll almost believe anything you say now, just because I feel comfortable just knowing that you actually get it. Other people are different than that, and I've definitely noticed that, you know.
And so
it's so
it's
interesting.
It's taken a lot for me to realize.
I want to say something about
we've got those different ways of communicating sometimes. And you're one of the teachers that I've had is like, just freaking listen to me. I don't need your story. I hate when somebody gives me a story, you know, just acknowledge how I'm feeling. It's like, but I am, but in my own weird way.
Yes, everyone's different. Yes.
So acknowledge that and be aware of it.
Yeah,
and
what do you want to say about ADD, Christopher?
Oh, what I was going to say to her about that is that many light workers and starseeds, let's just say many people on the planet right now are experiencing brain fog, ADHD, they can't focus on anything, they can't keep up with the time, what day is it? That's normal. If you have become more psychic, more gifted, and more, let's say, physically in the 3D world, more dumb or squirrel brain, something good is happening. Okay. So seriously, because if you think about it, why does your mechanism need to store any information if it has access to infinite information? Why does your mechanism need to focus on something when there's so many different things that you could experience in this lifetime? Why go to school for 10 years and become an expert in something when your consciousness is opening to an entirely different way of perceiving reality and conceptualizing time as well. So it's going to collapse your ability to hold on to information. And not just because we're getting older. There are people who are 24 years old who are experiencing something. I remember during my awakening, I had the most severe brain fog. I would have to repeat what someone said to me in my head and play it back and then talk. I was also so sleep deprived, I couldn't tell what was doing what. But it was the way in which my brain changed. I remember people would ask me something and there would just be nothing there. I would have no information. I couldn't speak either. And I would panic. My heart would drop like, you can't speak. Your brain is breaking down. You're seeing sparkly things. You must have brain cancer. I mean, I believed I had every kind of ailment because it was so severe when it happened. But also I had to learn that there are changes happening to my brain and that I may not be able to remember a lot. Like your short-term memory may also be weakened in the past several years as well, because there are certain aspects of all of that that we don't need. And also, if you didn't remember as much, you'd also not dwell as much. So there's an aspect of not needing to record and remember everything you experience, because a lot of times that's still keeping us out of the moment, is trying to remember, when instead of focusing on the now, a lot of times you've got people who are like, I've got ADHD. And I'm like, I don't believe that. I don't believe it's a disorder. And I don't believe that there's anything wrong with the fact that you're no longer interested in that right now, or that you can't remember what you were just about to say and you're doing something else. Maybe your laundry's halfway done and the clothes you were folding upstairs didn't get done. Whatever. Like, if these are the things that we're putting so much emphasis on, there's a lot of beauty in the attention, awareness, ability that you have. And there's a lot of magic and genius in it. I don't believe that we need to be so focused and to be so productive. That's another thing that's starting to weaken, is not just many people wanting to start their own businesses and leave the 3D capitalistic world behind. That's definitely happening. But also just the way in which we process stimuli is different. Just the world we live in is different. So there's a lot about that is happening for many people. When you brought that up, I'm like, that's happening for me. I have felt more attention deficit disorder in the past 3 years than I ever have in my whole life. And I was tested for it as a child many times. And I mean, I can go off onto many tangents and things. It's just, I just don't see anything wrong with when people describe their ADD or their ADHD. I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, you would not do well at some of these corporate jobs, but also just don't work at those corporate jobs. Just don't work any job. Why are we working at all?
Well,
So go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, for me, one of the things that I also experienced, so don't freak out if you're stepping into your abilities. The more I go into my abilities, the more I basically check out during them. And so so I don't remember my
What you
sessions
said,
a lot of times.
right?
Me neither. I don't
record
remember
them.
what I say. I don't remember what I say.
But I
most of the time,
also,
too.
just in general, I joke, time is relative. My husband would say, is this real time or is this Linda time? Yeah. Because I would say I'm going out for a few minutes and 4 hours later I come back and it felt like 15 minutes for me. So for me, time, I just
That's
feel time's
exactly.
relative.
That is what
Well-
I would consider a descension symptom. So where her soul's light body has integrated more fully than it ever has into physical form, if we're going to think of it in a linear time frame. And she's now perceiving reality different than she ever has.
Yeah.
It's permanent. It will never go away, nor do you want to. It will evolve.
Right.
Right.
It'll become something that you master eventually. It'll become your domain that you master, as opposed to it.
She won't feel impatience, because in the times where she is waiting, her consciousness will view that differently. This is moving in the right direction, if you will. Like, there's nothing wrong with the fact that you can't focus or remember all these things. What it's doing is going, get out of that city, get out of that job, get out of that house, get out of that Mayberry life or Pleasantville that you've created for yourself, and create something totally different and new that is yours, whether it's living in an eco village out in Arizona somewhere with people. I mean, that's what's going to happen, is like large communes of people. We're not going to be clustered up in these cities quite as much. It's going to spread out. And you're going to be able to get to across the United States in an hour. There won't be this whole 6-hour thing. I think it's preposterous that we're getting into vehicles and spending hours in them in the year 2022. So there's many things like that technologically that are going to update over the next 10 years. And our consciousness is already way ahead of that. We think that our brains are not developed enough. Our human is not developed enough for all this new technology. No, the new technology they're creating, the television and the phone and everything, is perfectly designed to activate the more primal, animalistic, gerbil aspects of yourself. We can create technology that activates and helps you strengthen the more highly developed aspects of your consciousness, which are happening. Like, you should be able to get to a lunch date with someone immediately. What is this driving and this car and this walking thing? All of this is unnecessary at some point. And so your system is already preparing for this fifth dimensional world that we're creating. And in the 5D, which a lot of people don't like using fifth dimension and 5D anymore, and just so we're all on the same page, in the 5D world, everything operates out of synchronicity. When you need a rubber band, your friend knocks on the door and has a rubber band in their pocket because they thought to take a rubber band with them that morning because you were going to have that desire that was born later. There will be no lapse in time and these seemingly accidental, coincidental things that happen. Everything will operate out of a web of pure synchronicity, and you're already getting there. Go ahead, please.
Well, it's just that we're going in past that time, and I want to make sure that you're not going to be late for any appointments or anything.
I have someone in about
20 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start.
I need to make sure that I have some time before.
Yes, exactly. And I kind of bookmark that, or I want to say, like, end that chapter book by saying there's I don't know who coined this, but ADHD is always dialed into higher dimensions. And if you give yourself that definition of ADHD, it feels way more empowering than you can't focus.
That. So, exactly, because all you're doing is processing information quicker, and you're processing more streams of information. It's the focus part that ADHD, I believe, is not about not being able to focus. It's about not having the wherewithal to choose from all of that. It's actually a heightened state. You would be able to manifest more in the time that you're given with that access to all those different streams of thoughts and conversations happening.
Yeah, and it's also embracing, one last thing. I think everybody here has probably experienced, I'm going to be late getting somewhere. There's no physical way I can get there in time. And suddenly you find that you've arrived 10 minutes early.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that has happened my whole life. Is this whole like, I'll leave now and I would like to get there at this time. And if it's not work, I will always get there exactly at that time. If it's work, I'm going to be late.
That's funny.
Unless
All
it's
right.
mine.
Right.
But
If it's your work, and then you're on time. But if it's working for somebody else,
yes,
right,
it's
right.
working
No,
for
I get
someone
that.
else, especially a corporation. I'm going to be late. Fire
Yeah.
me.
I'm trying to tell myself something, fire me.
Please. Yes.
All right. With that, Mr. Christopher, what is your final thought from your heart to ours as we close out our day, our time with you today?
I would say my last thought is everyone staying open to how magical life can really be, because for many people watching this now or in the future, the brighter the light, the darker the shadows. And there's many people dealing with very dark things in their consciousness. And a lot of you who are having dreams, desires, thoughts that come up, rage, just a lot of really heavy, primal, dark stuff, memories from the past that you don't know how to piece together or where it's coming from. These very strange, but also very dark things. You're not alone. And this is usually an indicator that you're about to break through into something really big and that there's a light on the other end of that. And it's okay to not be afraid of the dark. This is one of the things that I really want to help people embody is Chiron is also about transmuting that darkness, not into light, but transmuting the shame around the darkness into love, because you have to have both here. So there's an acceptance that comes with that. And if you heal yourself, you are ascending. It's the same thing. So to piece all of this back together, your shadow self, which is not all the parts of you that are bad that you have to be forced to accept, because spiritual people keep saying, I have to accept the bad stuff about me if I'm going to be whole. You're not there yet. You're getting there, but you're not quite there yet. The fact that you still see it as bad means there's judgment. So what I'd like people to do is really approach their journey as a movie and really know that whatever's supposed to happen is happening and playing out as it should, trying that perspective every now and then. And working with your shadow, working with who you came in to be because you chose a human self that does have limitation or programming or a design, working with that instead of trying to be someone that you're not. Once you get all this down, the ascension process is going to naturally happen. You don't have to make it happen. All you're going to do is just clip off all the cinder blocks and you're just going to float right to the surface. So the work that I do is really about clipping the cinder blocks, but also showing you all the magic that's waiting for you up there, all the voices and spaceships and sparkly things and people saying exactly what you were just thinking and having telepathic communications with people, lifting things with your hands, doing things with your hands and eyes to move energy in someone's body. These types of, at one time for me, impossible, not real things that I now call magic. This is what waits on the other side of a lot of that darkness as well, is a life that really is, for the average person, unbelievable.
Perfect.
And isn't that what you came here to have this time, especially?
Yes.
Instead of one of these lives
Yes.
that you have to look back and you want, this is the life that you want one of your future selves trying to meditate to come back to receive all kinds of information from it, because you're doing the work that's going to allow that future self to be totally in alignment and totally in that synchronized fifth dimensional state without all the resistance. You're clearing it out now. So a pat on the back would also be good.
All right, sir, you have 20 minutes left until your client is there. So if you need to hop off, feel free to hop off. We'll go ahead and start our gratitudes, but you do what you need to do, and I'll flip us into the Brady Bunch view.
How much time will this take?
This will take about
2 minutes.
Yeah, about 2 minutes to wrap us up.
Then that's totally fine. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll talk fast. Be sure, everyone, if you've enjoyed this show, to hit the like, share, subscribe, and make sure your little subscribe has a black bell so that you get notified when we have things going on. check out the links for Chrystopher below. And I also put his website in the chat. So do that. Chrystopher, thank you so much. You've given us so much amazing, juicy information, and I can't wait to have you back. And with that, Kat, who are we going to have next week?
Next week is going to be Mariah Wheatley, who I met at the conference, the Ancient Civilization Conference at Gaia a few weeks back, and she is a dowser, and she lives really close to Stonehenge. So she's just got a lot of data, a lot of research, and a lot of information about otherworldly things through the gift of dowsing. So it's going to be super fun. And with that, we will finally say thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking with the whole conversation. It's so good. I hope it blessed you the way that it blessed us. We love you. Be kind to yourself, be kinder to others, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.